Hello and welcome to Inside Indiana Business. I'm Gary Dick. AgriNovus Indiana is out with a new study with a stunning bottom line showing that aggregate losses from the pandemic cost Indiana food producers an estimated $500 million, sending shockwaves through a food chain going through disruption and evolution at the same time. Researchers analyze losses in five key areas: corn, soybeans, hogs, dairy, and eggs. And with more on the numbers and why they could actually point to opportunities in the future, pleased to be joined by the co-author of the research, the head of Purdue University's Department of Agricultural Economics, Jayson Lusk. And Jayson, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Gary.
Okay, the number kind of grabs people, $500 million. Did that surprise you? How substantial is that number?
It's a substantial number, and Indiana's agricultural producers were certainly hard hit, a lot of consternation in the early part of the pandemic. It's also important, though, to put it in the context of these sectors, which are probably $7 or $8 billion for the state annually. So, yeah, 500 is a real loss, but you know, it's one that I think we've been able to work through, and we've had a little more positive news later this fall and spring that I think have put producers in a better state. But there was a lot of pain and suffering and concern this spring and summer.
Yeah, talk about that in a moment. But in particular, some of the areas that I mentioned: corn, beans, pork, dairy, and eggs, those key product areas. In particular, your research found that pork producers and also corn grain farmers hit perhaps especially hard.
No doubt that's true. You know, there's the dollars, but then there's also the pain and suffering, if you will, of the people that had to live through those experiences. I think particularly the pork sector, when you had to shut down the packing plants because of worker illnesses, you had farmers that were worried about worst case scenarios that they never wanted to think about possibilities of euthanizing hogs, that kind of stress. Those are the things you don't see in the numbers, but I think, but were certainly very pronounced in the sector.
Yeah, you mentioned that commodity prices coming back, also government assistance. Perhaps those factors, will that mitigate, producers going out of business? Will that help the overall situation?
It'll definitely help. I mean, the federal disaster programs that have come about in response to CARES have pumped literally billions of dollars into the agricultural sector, so much so that, you know, overall 2020 across the entire United States, USDA is actually expecting net farm income to be higher than it's been the last 3 or 4 years, mainly due to government payments. So I think that's helped provide a floor below where some of these losses would have hit otherwise. And then we've had some improvement in commodity prices because China's picked up some of their buying of agricultural products coming out of some of that trade war.
Yeah, Jayson, I think it's interesting. We talk about the complexity of agriculture today and how things are set up. Interesting statistic. In the 1960s, the average grocery store offered about 6,000 products. Today, that number is likely more than 34,000 products. The supply chain is so complex. How does that factor into what you looked at there and really the impact here in Indiana and beyond?
Well, I think if we learned anything from this pandemic, it's that a lot of us didn't know very much about where our food came from. And even for folks like me that spend a career studying the food supply chain, we realized, wow, it's even more complicated than I thought it was. And all the steps that are required to get that product from the farm to the processor to the distributor to our grocery store, it's different for all the different products. And it involves multiple linkages in that supply chain. And it goes to show that we take a lot for granted in our food supply chain, and hopefully one of the outcomes of this is we realize how much we need to think the people that are involved in our food supply chain, whether it's that worker in the grocery store, the guy that drives the truck, or the person in the food processing plant. Yeah,
Jayson, you talk about the negative impact, obviously, but you see the potential for opportunity coming out of the pandemic as well for agriculture.
Yeah, maybe the corollary of that complexity is I think there's a real opportunity. It's one of the recommendations of our report that we did with EY for AgriNovus, that there's a real opportunity to increase our collaboration here, a real opportunity to get to know the people in front of and behind you in the food supply chain, so that when we have challenges like this again, we know who to call, we know what our opportunities are, we can maybe do some of that emergency and contingency planning that we weren't quite prepared for this time around.
All right, some very interesting results from a brand new report from AgriNovus Indiana. Again, that organization itself, one of the reasons why there's a bit of an optimistic outlook in agriculture in Indiana. Jayson Lusk, professor and also head of the Department of Ag Economics at Purdue. Always great to have you on the show. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks, Gary.
All right.